Well, you can't blow a lead if you never have a lead. And that's kind of the story of the most recent Blue Jackets game. Let's recap on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day, and thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. I also have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com. Win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Let's talk about the Jets game. We're not going to spend a ton of time on it because, frankly, I think it deserves as much attention as the effort that the team put in to play the game. But I wanted to kind of touch base on some things. And then what I want to talk about as well is tonight's game against the Leafs. This is going to be, I think, a different Leafs team that the Blue Jackets faced a couple of weeks ago. Some good reasons and some bad reasons for that. So we'll get into all of that. And then we're 20 games into the season, so it's time for another update on the prediction game standings. I need a snappier title for it than prediction game, but hey, this is where we're at right now. So let's talk about that Blue Jackets loss, which was rough, right? I don't think and I know that so full disclosure, after the 5-2 goal, I did turn it off in disgust. It doesn't look like I missed a ton after when I woke up the next morning and checked to make sure that nothing had happened that I had missed. But the Jets are a good team, right? And that's not to discredit the Jets for playing well, because the Jets did play well and the Blue Jackets did not play well. I kind of look at it as a similar game to the Avalanche game, like early in the season, where they just looked awful. And I think some of that was that the Blue Jackets played badly, and some of it was just that the Avs are a really good team, right? Similarly, the Jets are just a really strong team, right? They didn't ever really look like they were in danger of much. Couple of lucky bounces for the Jets, a couple of really bad save attempt from Elvis, and we'll talk about goaltending in a second here, because I don't think Elvis played great, but I also am not blaming him for this loss, right? But the Blue Jackets just looked really outclassed basically the entire game, right? It wasn't as brutal as the final score looked, I don't think. Goaltending didn't help, but the Blue Jackets actually created a little bit more offense than the Jets. So they had 2.93 expected goals for, and the Jets only had 2.7. So the Blue Jackets scored about a goal less than they should have, and the Jets scored a couple of goals more than they should have. Which is, that about tracks for a variety of reasons, right? But the Blue Jackets forward lines, the top line looked great. Everyone else was just kind of there, right? Like the third line was probably that might be the roughest I've seen the third line look in a while. I don't know what to do about the second line. I don't know what to do about this Monahan line. Because I like Monahan and Johnson together a lot. And I think partially it's a chemistry thing, right? Like you don't know who your line mates are going to be, and this is kind of specifically a Cheetah thing, but also like more extended, a second line / entire team thing, right? It is not lost on me that the lines that you're getting results from are the lines that are being allowed to stay together, right? Like the most consistent lines have been the third line, which has been, I think, basically nailed to each other for most of the season. Like, I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm going to look this up right now. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that third line is actually the line that has played the most together of any Blue Jackets line, right? Similarly, the Fantilli, Voronkov, Marchenko line has kind of just been left alone to do to do what they want, right? And shockingly, that is the again, that's the line that's doing the best, right? So the Blue Jackets have 4 lines that have played over 50 minutes so far this season. Sillinger, Coyle, Olivier is indeed leading the way. They've played 154 minutes together. Vronkov, Monahan, Marchenko is actually in second. They've played 135 minutes together. Vronkov, Fantilli, Marchenko has played 90 minutes together. And then Johnson, Fantilli, Jenner has played 75 minutes together. So, yeah, the third line, while not playing as much per game as some of the other lines, right? That is a line that has stayed together. It looks like they've played 16 games together here. So that's what, the 4th or 5th game of the season they were put together, give or take. Obviously Sillinger missed the game in, I want to say Calgary was the game that he missed. Calgary or Vancouver, I don't remember. But for the most part, that's been a consistent line, right? They know what their role is, they know what they're supposed to do, and they know who they're going to be playing with. Similarly, Vronkov, Fantilli, Marchenko took a minute to get there, but since those guys have been put together, they've been really, really good. And again, you know what you want from this line. And they've had some rough games, which is unexpected. It's a very young line. I think Kirill Marchenko is the oldest guy on that line, and he's 24 years old, right? Maybe 25. But Sean Monahan has struggled to start the season. Kent Johnson has struggled to start the season. And I think the combination of that is these guys don't know who they're going to be playing with. You know, like my theory doesn't fully pan out because obviously Monahan was on a really consistent line with Monahan and with Marchenko, Vronkov, excuse me. But for whatever reason, wasn't getting it done. And I know that some people have said, well, it doesn't matter who you play there; it's the Russians that are driving that line. But when you look at the numbers with Monahan on that line versus the numbers with Fantilli on that line, yes, I think Marchenko is the big driver on that line. But that line has been so much better with Fantilli on there than Monahan that I'm kind of inclined to to say actually it's probably not entirely the Russians. I don't know what's up with Monahan. But to go back to my point about consistency, right? Like the lines that are performing the best are the lines that are staying together. The lines that are underperforming are the lines that have been changed around a lot. And again, this goes back to it's not surprising to me that as soon as Fantilli gets consistent line mates, he started producing, right? Didn't produce in the last game, but I believe in the 6 or 7 games since that line has been put together, he's got 6 or 7 points, right? I think it's 6 points in 6 games. And he had, I think, 7 points in the 14 games that they had previous to that, right? So obviously a big jump there. And I do think that that's partially an increase in line mate quality and partially an increase in ice time, but also consistent line mates. That I think was a big reason for the Blue Jackets' success last season as well, right? Was that they had these consistent lines that they were rolling. You know, like yes, there was some changing up and some mixing around, but like that top line last season stayed together basically the entire season, right? There was some moving around, and obviously Chinikov started there and then got swapped for Vronkov when he got hurt. Second line, once they figured out that Fantilli and Johnson worked well together, they started performing much better and they got stuck together, right? Similarly, the defense was very good last season, or improved last season, I should say. I don't want to say very good. But it was consistent, right? Which is a far cry from the previous couple of seasons, you know, the Pascal Vincent coached years, the Brad Larson coached years, where they just felt like they had a game to figure things out. And if it didn't work, then they mixed things up. And we're kind of seeing similar-ish things now with Dean Everson, right? In terms of specifically the second line of they can't find a third guy for that line. And so the guys are getting, so they had Luka Delbert-Blues there for a game. They had Chinikov there for a game. They had Miles Wood there for a game. And like, because the line isn't scoring, they're changing things up without the apparent, anyway, without the apparent like connection that it takes time to build chemistry. And just because a line doesn't work after playing together for 18 minutes doesn't mean that it's not going to work, right? And I understand that the team is kind of looking for something to click on that line, but I think you're going to have to give it a little bit more consistency than that. And again, you look at the lines across the league, right? And you look at the lines that play the most together. So Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, and Gabe Velarde is the most consistent forward line in the NHL, right? Second, Arturi Lehkonen, Nate McKinnon, Martin Necas. The third line is Slavkovsky, Suzuki, Caulfield. The fourth line is Gauthier, McTavish, Seneca. Like those four lines, and then Sillinger, Coyle Olivier comes in fifth for some hilarious reason. Those four lines are all producing extremely well. The Slavkovsky, Suzuki, Caulfield line specifically has been excellent, both offensively and defensively. But and again, partially, I think the McKinnon thing is the McKinnon effect of it all, right? But it's not lost on me that lines that play together more are better. And so all of this switching around, I know that they're trying to look for something that works, but what if you gave it more than 15 minutes to know whether it worked or not, right? And again, if I flip back to the Blue Jackets and I go from minutes played to, again, flipping, the Johnson, Monahan, Delbar, Blues line had a 70% expected goals percentage. So they were creating 70% of the expected goals. Per 60 minutes, they were expected to score over 2.5 goals a game and only allow 1.1 goals per game. Johnson, Monahan, Jenner. Obviously, Jenner's out long-ish term. Week to week is my guess. But they've got a 60% expected goals for, right? Like, obviously, it doesn't always work like that. So the Johnson, Monahan, Chinikov line had a really rough showing of it, but they only played 11 minutes together, right? But the point I'm making here is, and we'll have to move on in a second, but the point I'm making is why some lines get more grace than others. And I think this all kind of comes back to Everson loves to rely on his veterans. And again, Everson gives a lot more grace to some players than others, which is intensely, intensely frustrating. Let's take that and then let's talk a little bit more about the Jets game. I want to touch on goaltending really briefly and the problem that has started to arise and how they need to kind of knock that on the head before it becomes a bigger problem. And then we'll talk about the Leafs because everything is always about the Leafs. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I've got to tell you about Rougier, because making excuses doesn't solve anything, right? We've heard them all before. It's stress. I'm tired. It happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that is where Rougier comes in. They offer fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. It's super easy to get started. All you do is connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online. There's no awkward waiting rooms. There's no in-person appointments. And if you get prescribed, it ships discreetly directly to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private. And it's all about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit rugiet.com/lockedonnhl to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/lockedonnhl. And don't forget to use our code LOCKEDONNHL so they know we sent you. Rougier, stop making excuses and start making moves. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent about line consistency, but also I don't think I'm wrong. So let's move on and let's talk about goaltending, because the goaltending wasn't good in this game. 5 goals on 30 shots is not good enough, right? Like, some of these goals, I'm like, yeah, okay. A goal is a goal, right? The opening goal, I thought, for example. And I want to say the third goal, I believe, power play goal. I'm willing to extend some grace on power play goals. You know how I feel about power play goals. That being said, that fourth goal can't go in. That fifth goal certainly can't go in. That like Logan Stanley slap shot that he telegraphed from space. it straight up can't happen, right? Like, Zach Werenski's just scored a goal to make it 4-2. There's, 15 minutes left in the game? That's more than enough time to mount a reasonable comeback. And then Kyle Connor scores that goal basically from below the goal line. I've seen some people saying, yeah, that's just a really good shot. But, like, I think Elvis left too much room. I don't think he was expecting it. Yeah, he kind of bounced it off the back of him. But, like, that, to me, that's a goal that shouldn't happen. And again, the Logan Stanley goal was maybe the worst goal a Blue Jackets goalie has allowed this season. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but, like, just brutal. A combination of the way that the goal was telegraphed and the player, and, like, Logan Stanley is good for, like, 1 goal a year. I think he's actually on 2 or 3 goals a year now, but this is his 3rd goal of the season. But he's usually good for a goal a year. And it brings back the Zach Kassian wraparound goal from, I want to say, the 2022 season. They were playing Arizona, and it was just backbreaking, right? And the goaltending wasn't good enough, is the point I'm making here. Yes, the team didn't play very well in front of him, but the goaltending also didn't help, right? Like, yes, that game probably should have finished like 3-2 or 4-3. It didn't. It finished 5-2. Blue Jackets scored less than they should have done. Eric Comrie was good, which, I know that you need to take advantage of not playing Hellebuck, but also Eric Comrie's a really good backup, so it's tough, right? Here's my issue with the goaltending, and here's why, like, I've seen a lot of people talk about how Jet should be the number 1 goalie and Elvis is reverting to form and blah, 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 right? Elvis, I believe, still has, despite this wobbly game, let's say, Elvis still has a 900 save percentage on the season, which is the highest save percentage since, like, his sophomore season, right? He's playing well. He's 4-4 on the season. Yes, he's allowing more goals than Jet is per game, and yes, he's had some bad games. That being said, he didn't play for like 2 weeks because he was sick, and then I guess I still haven't really had an answer on how legit it was in terms of, like, sickness versus, like, benching for petty reasons, but there was that report that Elvis said he was too sick to practice, and then the next day was like, okay, I think I can play tonight. And the coaching staff basically were like, well, if you're too sick to practice, then you're too sick to play, which feels, on the one hand, I get it, but on the other hand, feels stupid. I don't know. I don't think he was still sick for the Canadiens game. I don't think he was sick for the Rangers game, right? But Jet started 5 games in a row. Whatever, fine. Elvis played, looked like he hadn't played in a couple of weeks, right? Yes, he was bad, but also I don't think it helped that he hadn't played. Elvis is one of those goalies where, like, and I've talked about this a lot, right, in terms of, like, starting goalies versus backups, is that some goalies play better when they play more, some goalies play worse when they play more. And Elvis kind of is a goalie that needs to play not a lot, but regularly, right? Like, I think for me, the ideal, anyway, is that Elvis plays 1 out of every 3 games, I think. So, and if that gives Jet 2 out of every 3, then that's fine. I think he can deal with it. I think Jet is one of those goalies that plays better the more he plays, right? So the problem is Elvis got rusty, and he hasn't played super well. Like, we've had a couple of bad Elvis games in a row, is the thing. Let me pull up the numbers real quick. So he played well against the Islanders on November 2nd, but that was the infamous stick snapping at the end of regulation. The Vancouver game, November 8th, he had an 883. That was a bad Elvis game. That Kiefer Sherwood Brock Besser, game-winning goal with like 5 minutes left. Again, an uncontested distance shot that just beat him. And then Tuesday night against Winnipeg, an 883 again, 5 goals on 30. So we've had a couple of bad Elvis games in a row. He's on a 3-game losing streak right now. Form suggests that Elvis will probably be pretty good the next game he plays. I don't know what the next game he's going to play is because Jet is playing pretty well. I'm just going to pull up his recent number. So he had a 970 against the Rangers, which was that overtime loss, and then he had a 906 against Montreal. My assumption is that Jet's going to play tonight, that they're going to get some kind of semblance of the rotation back, is my guess. But the Blue Jackets, I don't know when their next back-to-back game is, because they have a game tonight, Thursday. They have one on Saturday. They have, I think, a Monday or a Tuesday game, and then a Thursday game next week. So there's plenty of breaks in between. What I would do is get the rotation going up again, but I think if Jet plays well tonight, then they're probably going to start him against the Red Wings on Saturday, because yes, the rotation is good, but also at the end of the day, you have to ride the hot hand in goaltending, especially if your team is scrapping for points, especially if it's a divisional matchup like the Red Wings game is, like tonight is. The Blue Jackets have a weird little section of games where they play Toronto tonight, the Red Wings on Saturday, and then I think their next game is also the Leafs after that, and then they play the Penguins again. So 4 conference matchups, and then 1 division matchup against the Penguins, which for me is a must-win game, because you can't keep giving points to your Metro opponents. Penguins had a hot start and then have started to fall off a little bit. Again, take advantage of that. But that's looking way too far down the line. Like the point I'm making here is goaltending was bad, but I think there was a reason for it to be bad. Now it's kind of important to figure out what's more important. Is it getting the goaltending tandem back up and running? Because when they were alternating games, they were both playing well. Or is it to bank as many points as you possibly can, and Elvis will play whenever he plays, and possibly will not be good, right? Which is kind of a tough conundrum, because I don't necessarily think they need to get Elvis going, because again, he's playing much better than he has in previous seasons. But do you risk another bad Elvis game in a game that you really need to win, right? So I don't know what the answer is there. We'll see Jet tonight against Toronto. We'll see what happens against the Red Wings. Like, Jet might have a bad game tonight, and then it'll be a much easier decision to start Elvis against the Red Wings. But I just do not know. Let's talk about the Leafs in that. Let's follow that conversation thread. I lost my own conversation thread, so we're going to follow the Leafs, because everything is always about the Leafs, and they are going through it at the minute. So we'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I've got to tell you about FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Just go to FanDuel.com, find the heaviest possible favorite you can. Whether that's the Blue Jackets losing, whether that is the Chiefs winning, although they're going through it at the minute. So, whether you want to put some money on the Cleveland Cavaliers, who their season started up recently. I know other sports. Doesn't matter what your bet is on. Just put $5 on it, and if it wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets so you can spend on whatever you want. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Let's talk about the Leafs, who are having a time at the minute. They've just broke it. They broke a 5-game losing streak, which was, I'm sure, very traumatic for them. They had an overtime win against the Blues. And they are kind of struggling in a lot of categories, right? Their power play is basically dead in the water. It's worse than the Blue Jackets, which is saying something, right? Their penalty kill is mediocre. They're allowing more goals a game than basically anyone. They're scoring a bunch. They figured out how to score goals, which I'm sure is fun for them. But the goaltending has been bad. I don't know if that's going to change now that Joseph Wall is back. He's played 2 games so far for them, has a win and a loss, and has a .934 save percentage, has allowed 5 goals on 61 shots in those 2 games. My guess is that the Blue Jackets will potentially see Wall tonight. Blue Jackets did a really good job of taking advantage of Toronto last time these two teams played. Toronto started Caden Primo, who was their third string goalie, and it didn't go well for him. The Blue Jackets didn't play very well in that game, but got away with the fact that they just decided to fill the net, essentially. That third line just really decided to show up big, right? Going back to consistency again, amazing, right? So the Blue Jackets won 6-3 last time, and it would have been 6-1 if not for a very, very late kind of mini meltdown from Elvis, and also a late push by the Leafs. I believe John Tavares scored with like 4 minutes left, and then Nick Robertson scored with like a minute and a half left, and obviously not enough time to mount a full comeback, but it was kind of a worrying sign of what was to come in terms of the Blue Jackets blowing leads, right? The Leafs, crucially, do not have Austin Matthews in the lineup right now. He is out. He is injured. He had been struggling before that. William Nylander, who missed a couple of games with injury, was not in the game that the Blue Jackets played against the Leafs a couple of weeks ago. He has 27 points in 17 games. John Tavares has overcome the curse of age and has 25 points. Matthew Knies has 22 points in 19 games as well. Their defense is what I would consider an adventure right now. They've got a bunch of injuries. They're not getting a lot of consistency from their defensemen right now. They picked up Troy Stecher, who from waivers from the Oilers, who might solidify things a little bit, but as of right now, it's just kind of Morgan Riley doing his best and everyone else is there. So again, if the Blue Jackets can take advantage of that, then that's great news, because I do think they're going to have to try and outscore the Maple Leafs, which might be tough because they're scoring at about 3.5 goals a game right now. Blue Jackets are scoring under 3 goals a game. So they have the goals in them, like we've seen it, but they're going to have to outscore the Leafs, and they're going to have to out-goaltend the Leafs, which I think is infinitely more likely than outscoring them. Again, I think we're going to see Jet tonight, who was good against Montreal and very good against the Rangers, and has been good all season, right? I just don't know how the goal scoring is going to go, because the Blue Jackets have really struggled to score goals, just kind of in general, but also I feel like recently. The leader in the last 5 games is Adam Fantilli. He's got 3 goals in his last 5 games. Zach Werenski's got 5 points in his last 5 games. And Kromachenko's got 5 assists in his last 5 games. Marchenko hasn't scored in a couple of games, which I feel like should be maybe slightly concerning, but is just kind of what it is right now. He's racking up the assists, so I'm not like mad about it, right? Again, Voronkov, I would like to see him get involved. Like again, that top line really should be the engine driving the bus right now. But like that third line, the Coyle, Olivier, Sillinger line had a really good night the last time the Leafs were in town. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to suggest that they might have another good night. Cole Sillinger did get fully half of his points for the season in that game. I think he had a goal and 3 assists, and he's got 8 points on the season. So 4 of his 8 points came in that one game. Again, similarly, Olivier's got 9 points in 20 games and had, I think, a third of his points come in that one game. Coyle's third on the team in scoring right now. He's got 14 points in 20 games, which is fine. I worry that the team is going to rely on them closing down the game, which might be something of a mistake. But maybe I'm wrong. Again, I feel like it always comes off as I'm criticizing this line, and I'm not. I think it's a good line. I just don't think it does what Dean Everson thinks it does, right? Like, he's treating it like it's this shutdown, steady line, and it just kind of isn't that. It's very good offensively. it's outscoring its problems at the minute, but it's not a defensive shutdown line. I don't think I would consider it a checking line either, really. And my guess is that is probably what's going to be matched up against the Nylander line. So that might go poorly for them. We'll see. Let's talk predictions on that. I was going to tweet this out yesterday and then did not do that, but I have we're at a multiple of 5 again. So we're 20 games in. We're going to talk leaderboard. Somehow I am still at the top of the leaderboard, which feels incorrect. I haven't had a correct goal scoring pick in like the last 5 games, but what I did do was predict 3 of the last 5 scores, which I do think is very funny. We had a couple of guys in the most recent, not the game 20, but game 19, correctly predict the score and a goal scorer. So they got really bumped up. So I'm on 9 points. So is Luke Risco is also on 9 points. So joint first. Second place is joint with Sparky Wilson and Dan Good, who both are on 7 points. I have my good friend Anonymous, who is on 6 points, and so is N-Bobbinger. I don't know if that's the correct way to pronounce that, but if it's not, I'm very sorry. But that's the leaderboard right now. Everyone else is doing great, but that is the top 3 scoring positions right now. So let's talk predictions for this game. And I don't know. I feel like I have simultaneously like all of the faith in this team to run the score up and also 0 faith in this team to run the score up. I kind of want to just predict the last score that this team had against the Leafs and say it's going to be a 6-3 final score. But I don't know if I'm that confident. So let's be a little bit more conservative. Let's say a 5-2 final score. Blue Jackets win. And let's say what have my last handful of guesses been? I kind of want to keep cyberbullying Ken Johnson, who hasn't scored in a bajillion games. But I also don't know that I trusted Everson to actually play him in this game. It's been a couple of games, so obviously we must punish Ken Johnson for not scoring in 2 games and send him to the 4th line and not put any blame on the line mates, whatever. This isn't to say that Ken Johnson doesn't have to be better, because I do think he can be better, but I don't know that he's the entire problem with what's going on with his game right now. Let's say it's been a couple of games since a Marchenko goal, so let's say a Marchenko goal. Or do I want to say Fantilli? Let's say a Fantilli goal. Fantilli, I believe, got his first hat trick in Toronto last season. I don't know that he's necessarily going to get a hat trick again tonight, but let's say a Fantilli goal. I feel like he always plays well in Toronto. A 5-2 Blue Jackets win with a Fantilli goal. That's my final guess, final prediction. Get yours in the YouTube comments down below, or there's going to be a tweet going up probably around about the time that you hear this. And hopefully Twitter won't die and break Hootsuite, which is what happened for the last game. So I apologize for that. That being said, get your predictions in. Thank you for listening to this episode. Tomorrow we'll break down tonight's game and we'll take a peek ahead at the Red Wings game on Saturday. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at, you can find me on Blue Sky at JKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter and LO-Blue Jackets on Blue Sky. We're also over on TikTok if that is a thing that you do. And thanks again for making us your first listen. Get your predictions down below. Until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.